Hello, everyone, and welcome to From Survivor to Thriver special episode. Excited. Um, it is the winter solstice as we record this, the shortest day of the year. So if you're standing outside Stonehenge, the sun's going to rise right in the middle of it. Whoever or however they decided to build that thing, and for whatever reason, it's one of, for me, it is one of the most interesting days of the year just because so many of our winter festivals are all centered around the idea that we get sunlight for so little of the day. And those of you that have been listening know that I love winter, so I don't really, some people get a little freaked out by this. This is, we're getting into Marc's season. So with that, let me throw it across the creek to our toasty co-host. It's a warm day here today. It's not going to stay that way, but Erik, how are we this morning?
Good morning. And yes, for you, it might be the shortest day of the year, but for me, it is still going to be 24 hours. So just on the technical side, it's the
the shortest daylight.
Correct. Yes. The shortest amount of daylight. But good to see you at such an early hour as you and I are.
I thought it was good to see you.
As you and I are pounding coffee. How's everything with you?
Everything's excellent. Busy. It is that time of the year.
Yes.
As I jokingly refer to it, it's money-making season. Only half joking because it truly is. But things are great. Ready for a couple of holiday parties, a bunch of skiing, and seeing all of our favorite people as they show up for their holiday celebrations with us here in Colorado.
Excellent. Yeah, and it's about to get to, well, as you alluded to, it's a little warmer today. We're going to have a negative number in front of our temperature for the next few days, but the snow is going to be very good. So I am excited for that.
Hey, happy Hanukkah.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know. We're on day, I don't know. 25. I don't know. It just goes on and on and on.
It's 8 days.
But kind of having the Portuguese blood in me as well. So I feel like I roll from Hanukkah into Christmas, and it's just like one big month. And
Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah. I mean, I'm a Festivus guy. Festivus.
That's right. Oh yeah, so. And just like our guest today, he's celebrating his birthday month. Yes. So we'll get into that. We'll get into a lot of things. We'll get a little bit into 80s music because he and I share a love for the same artist. I'm not. Yeah. See, I'm looking at Marc. Yeah, I'm kind of teasing it. Marc's not such a big...
I'll just have to admit again that for years I said that I hated 80s music, and I actually don't.
Yes, you don't, but I think you'll like this one. But without further ado, let's go somewhere much warmer, over to Florida. Florida, by way of California, is the correct way. Joining us today is Andrew Velasquez. Andrew is a born and bred Angelino who always knew he was meant for a life in beauty. He is the founder of Love is Art, Art is Love, Amor es Arte, Arte es Amor en Español, Cosmetics, and a finalist on American Beauty Star. In a star-studded career, Andrew has worked as a makeup artist with major celebrities from Lady Gaga to RuPaul to Demi Lovato, along with countless others on major film, TV, and music video productions. Growing up in Boyle Heights on the east side of Los Angeles, in the closet, and raised in a macho environment, he turned his faith in God and the support of his mother, who encouraged him to attend the Los Angeles Music and Art School. After earning his GED, he attended LA Trade Tech at the age of 16 and graduated with a degree in fashion merchandising. Shortly thereafter, he attended cosmetology school at West Valley Occupational Center, graduating with honors and receiving his license. While rising through the ranks of MAC and Anastasia Beverly Hills, he built a loyal following in film, TV, music, and fashion before being selected for American Beauty Star and launching his own cosmetics line. Andrew currently lives with his dogs, parentheses, his children, and husband, Johnny Debut, in Orlando, Florida. With that, let's go to a much warmer place this morning, Marc, to welcome in Andrew. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Marc. Thank you, Erik. That was quite the introduction. I really appreciate you guys getting up so early, but I know that we're all early risers here. So whether we're on the East Coast or the West Coast, the sun rises and we're up and we're following that light, right?
That's right.
Even
Yeah,
if it's
no.
for a little crack.
Yeah, it's not light here yet.
Yes.
Yeah, it's gonna get there.
We're getting there. We're getting there. And you know,
But yeah, but early morning is great for us. I could have listened to a
Nice.
little. I could have listened to a little Madonna this morning when
Hey,
I when
little
I
ray of
woke up.
lights.
Little ray of light. Yes.
Yeah, you know she's my queen. You know she's
Oh, I know she is.
yeah. I mean I'm the proud owner of 4 Madonna tattoos. She's celebrating 40 years in her career. I'm celebrating 41 years on this planet. I feel like all her albums and her career has been a timeline for different parts of my life, and each album I can remember the fragrance of whatever I was wearing or whatever my mom was wearing, because she's really the reason why I was introduced to Madonna, you know, in the 80s, where you had Lucky Star, Borderline, La
I think
Isla
Borderline is
Bonita.
I think Borderline is probably my favorite Madonna song.
It's a good one.
I love
It's a
that
great
one.
music video. It's a great
It's a
music video.
great video,
Yeah.
and it has like it's look, all of her music's great, but
Hmm.
Borderline is like a great song. Like the lyrics, the way it fits together. I think that's why the video's so great. And I remember just having a huge crush on her after seeing the movie Desperately Seeking Susan.
Yes.
I mean, quintessential 80s. That just
Yeah.
really
Yes.
captured all the essence of New York in the 80s when it was cool. I mean, not that it's not cool anymore, but you know what I mean?
Yep.
When it was just kind of like free and just fashion forward and
Yep.
everything was
Gritty.
about dance.
Gritty.
Yeah.
Gritty.
Club
Yeah.
kid. Yeah. Club kids.
Yes.
And yes.
Oh, you're speaking my language, Erik. Don't get me started.
Well, I mean,
No, but
well, let's get you started. So here you are, right? Your mom turns you into a big Madonna fan. I actually
huge.
lived in Koreatown for a while.
Oh, nice.
So I wasn't far at all from where you grew up, and I cannot imagine knowing that community the way I do. Like, you know, you say in the closet, like not only were you in the closet, you probably had to put a front on in a certain way
Mhm.
just to get through the day, would be my guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a parent of first generation Mexican American. Parents of my parents are both immigrants from Mexico. My dad's from Jalisco, Guadalajara, one of 14. My mom is one of 12 from León, Guanajuato. And yeah, I mean, they both moved out here at the same time, but kind of parallel towards each other. And they met in at Talpa Church, which was in Boyle Heights. You know, did their catechisms and followed their faith, and that's actually where they got married, where I was baptized, where I did my first communion, where I became a godfather, where it's like the church, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But yeah, everything was kind of like centered around that.
I'm a recovering Catholic, so I understand.
Yeah, the guilt is really in there, right? And
it's built.
yeah,
I mean, any religion that literally starts with something called original sin, like, what do you think you're going to feel like?
Hence why I also was obsessed with Madonna, because you have Like a Prayer, you
Like
have
a
all
prayer.
that. And,
Yes.
yes.
What do you guys think about this like TikTok rage with Like a Prayer right now? People actually figuring out what the song was about. Have you not seen this? It's
I haven't seen it.
hysterical.
I'm not on TikTok, but
we'll get back to that.
Heard of, yeah. The latest I heard about TikTok was her Frozen remix and the
that was really good, actually.
Yeah, there was a leaked song that was supposed to come out. I forgot, but it's trending right now too. But I hadn't heard about the Like a Prayer one.
We'll get back to that. You keep talking about your childhood. We'll get back to that.
Anyhow, so yeah, my parents worked hard. You know, my mom was a stay-at-home housewife and mother, which is a job on its own. And my dad was a mechanic during the day and a tow truck driver at night, and just very clean cut, you know, work ethics. And there was a lot of gangs in Boyle Heights that were around us, and most of them we had to be cool with, and they kind of protected the house because we had like this white fence. And actually, there was a gang called White Fence that they were very prevalent. But yeah, you're right, Mark. I did have to kind of put on a front. I did pick up on quickly that anything that was outside the traditional macho role of, you know, even being creative, like I had to kind of like hide. And I feel that a lot of people part of my LGBTQ community have kind of had to do that, maybe in my generation, to feel like they need to fit in and just not get what we'd call clocked. So the more that you're like straight acting, the more that you just kind of like you're passing, then the more you're just kind of like living with everyone else and just fitting in. So yeah, it was a trait that I picked up on quickly. I didn't even know that I could do it. And um yeah, I mean but I will say, I think because of that and because of the layers of just the guilt and just being in the closet and just trying to like not be outed, I still like yearned to express my femininity. And I know even for straight cis hetero men, I can relate to this because a lot of my therapists in the past have been straight men, and they also recognize to like, yeah, no, I hear you. That feminine energy is important. It has to have a balance with both. And really, my husband is the first person to have accepted that and has said, "You be you, Andrew. Like I'm not expecting you to be this perfect straight macho Andrew. You just be the Andrew that you want to be." And yeah, I just finally felt like loved and heard, and you know what I mean. Like he's just it. He's my best friend. He's the homie for life, and he just happens to be my husband at the same time. So no, I'm very grateful for that. And all the relationships in the past were more toxic and more just like, you know, I realized that I wasn't ready. I wasn't the person, I wasn't the Andrew that I was supposed to be to deserve that partner that was going to accept me for all of me. And yeah, it just took a long time to find it, but we're here, going to be 13 years together
Oh,
and
congratulations.
nine
Wow.
years married in May. Thank you so
Congrats.
much.
Oh,
That's awesome.
congrats.
Well,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
just going to say, and please, I don't like to put words in anyone's mouth, but listening to the story, I'm guessing there's a point where you started to realize, you know, even, you know, because you hear it all the time. It's like, I didn't even really know I was being
Yeah,
different or acting different. I, you know, like any other youth, teenager, you want to fit in, you want to find a peer group.
sure.
But I'm wondering, like, if you think about the arc of that, I'm sure there were points where you started to realize it. So I'd love to hear about that. And I'm guessing, you know, you were ready to find your love of your life and your homie, as you just expressed as, which I
Yeah,
love, because
yeah.
you were ready, right? Like you had finally probably found the Andrew, you know, and just and not to minimize it at all, like straight, gay, sit, whatever it is, like we don't find our partners often until we're comfortable in our
Hmm.
own skin. Like we have to find that
Absolutely.
because they can't see us for who we are if we can't. You know, there's kind of a symbiosis of like that person kind of helps you, you know, break through, you know, if you want to use, you know, the metamorphosis entrance of like, you know, busting out of the cocoon, so to speak. But there's also that sense of like you have to be ready to do that. So I wonder, you know, I'm sure there were some breadcrumbs along the way of like your, you know, in the bio, your mom was mentioned as someone who was able to support you and see you for that. But I'm sure there were pieces of this that kind of trail through all the way back through the beginning up to where, you know, the Andrew we see now.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I after being on that reality competition show and being quarantined for 3 weeks, I was left alone with my thoughts, and we weren't allowed to bring devices because it was called a frozen set, which means when you're in studio, you're not allowed to talk or even have any kind of communication unless the camera is on. They like to conserve your energy. So while I was back in my hotel room, I would just write and journal, and start drawing. Like you know, I would kind of went back to my roots, like as an art student, and just started creating these like face charts. Like, just I'm going to show some of them to you guys right here.
Oh, it's so
And
awesome. Yeah.
thanks. And then I realized as I finished the show and I'm wrapping up, and the whole time I'm trying to really stay focused. And what I came up with is called my Zen. I would meditate, I would practice gratitude. I had a checklist every day that I would use to just keep me focused. And I really focused my energy to not just perform and do the challenge that was expected, but I wanted it to be more for my mother's health because she was going through a really rough patch at the time. And I genuinely feel that brought me towards the end of the competition as a finalist. And at rap, I realized, you know, after I had this, I still have the journal, that I had a freaking book. and they were essays, and they were all parts of my life. So going back to what you said, Mark, absolutely. I think the philosophy behind what I'm exposing is that through traumas, I was able to triumph and transform into power, and to be able to use that vulnerability that I've been hiding for so long and feeling ashamed about, and now embracing it and feeling more real and more authentic to discover the potentials that I ultimately had, and I knew I always had it. So I'm even grateful for the triggers and the traumas, because I feel like that shaped me and got me to where I'm supposed to be on the right path. If I hadn't experienced that difficult situation, almost getting a DUI, or being jumped, being bullied, like having suicide attempts, like all those kind of really dark places, I wouldn't have discovered the light as well, because one can't exist without the other.
So true. And you just brought up my favorite V word, vulnerability. And uh, I want to know, what was it like growing up, as you say, in that super macho, right? East LA culture,
Yeah.
where, right, you have this deep dark secret, and the culture itself is the furthest thing possible from
Mhm.
vulnerability. How difficult was that for you? And did you ever feel, or did you ever find anyone, and again, without giving away too much in your book, but did you ever find anyone that you felt comfortable being able to share that with,
Uh-huh.
in kind of a secret pact, if you will?
Yeah, no, definitely not in catechism. Definitely not in
Yeah, I can't envision
uh
that.
Yeah.
no, not at Talbot Church, not in
I got kicked out of my
uh
confirmation class, so
oh,
I questioned a priest. You're not allowed to do that.
right. Right. Yeah, no, it was not elementary school, not junior high. Yeah, I mean, I even had to like watch the way I walked. I remember even just figuring that out. Like if I walked differently, that I would also be clocked, even by women, even by like young girls at the time, because
Probably,
there were.
I wonder if it'd be more so actually, right? Because guys, we could be sort of ignorant to stuff like that unless we're looking for it.
Well, I feel like because they were cholas, you know what I
Say,
mean. It was very
Yeah.
that it was very Mi Vida Loca, like my crazy life, like that. It was that movie was around. It was real. Like that's what I was living in. And it's funny because my mom first migrated from Mexico, they lived in Echo Park. Like that's where they first settled. And I ended up living there many years later, but it's way different now than it was back in the 70s and the 80s.
yeah.
Yep.
Um, and so, not honestly, it wasn't until I would say late high school, like 10th grade. Okay. Yeah, I had this group of friends that were all musicians and were kind of like the outcasts. And we would have we call DPs and ditch parties. And so I'm listening to like Morrissey, the Smiths, The Cure, and we're having these like, kind of like day goth parties, and they would, play guitar and drums, but we were all weird and painted our nails, but it was like straight, gay, androgynous. It was all the things.
Yep.
And yeah, that was like that was probably the only group where I kind of felt a little bit comfortable with, where I started to say like, you guys, I think I'm bi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they were the first ones that I would open up to about that. Um, and I did have a girlfriend and a boyfriend at the same time. I remember I felt like a pimp, and that was pretty cool. But I didn't find out that until later that the girlfriend actually had broke up with her boyfriend, who was in another band, like a rival band from us. And I was walking home. I'm not going to give too much away, but let's just say that it didn't end pretty. And that was just one of the times where I realized even just being bi was also wrong. And yeah, I was basically attacked. And um, yeah, I would say fast forward into, going into like the really lows of the lows, and having to, I'm going to be very, very vulnerable now, but it was like a moment where I just didn't feel like I should be alive anymore. I feel like I was giving a lot of people around me stress. And even my mother at the time was questioning me. And even the person that I looked to the most was rejecting me. So at that point, I'm like, why am I even here? I think I was 15, and yeah, it was the first time that I saw Tylenol PM, and I just kept taking them, and then razor blades, and obviously it didn't happen, but through that, was transferred to a hospital and went to a psych ward and discovered therapy, and that honestly saved my life. I compare it to like an alcoholic hitting rock bottom and just being homeless, or going to a rehab. Like, that's what I feel it was for me. It was emotionally a rehabilitation to break out of that cocoon, and then after that, I literally remember saying to myself, I don't want to live like this. I choose life. I want to be a light. I don't want to live in this darkness anymore. And so I wrapped up high school really quick by just taking my GD, and then I started attending fashion merchandising school, and that's where I met other creative people and other artists. And now it's the '90s, and it's club kids, and it's fun, and that's when my career really took off. 2 years of fashion school, 2 years of cosmetology school, and then I started working at MAC Cosmetics in the '90s, which was all the rage, the fun, and they were like the coolest, makeup artists that were out, because there was no other makeup art cosmetic that was that big at that point.
Well, and
Um,
it was a mainstream sort of right. And I say mainstream, obviously there were slices of counterculture in
mhm.
it, but when I think of the cosmetics counter as like, a straight white cisgendered dude, I think of the fancy grocery store, right? You walk, I mean, not
Yeah,
grocery store, department store. You
yeah,
walk
yeah,
into the front door of Macy's and you're just assaulted by these like smells and colors. And Mac was like,
totally.
and Mac was all like, dark metal and like
Yeah,
some cool ass music, and like even me was like, I was an actor, so makeup to me was a job, like that was
nice
something I learned how to do. But even me, I'd go over to the Mac counter and just be like, yeah, I'd hang out here, these people are cool. But thinking
for
about
sure.
that,
And
I'm
the
just
colors
wondering,
too.
well, the colors were very
The
different, yeah,
colors were
everything,
really like
yeah.
cool. And I
Well,
still
and
wear
that's
some of those colors today on my nails and my
Well, and
toes.
I remember like that's
Nice.
when the big loud eye got there, talking about Madonna, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
she'd roll
Mm-hmm.
out and that like, just giant, almost like blue velvet eye and stuff. But so I wonder, Andrew, so here you are, right? You, it sounds like your mom was never anything but in your corner and wanting
Mm-hmm.
you to be whatever Andrew was. She just loved you. But there, when did you have this moment of like, oh, like to be happy and to be who I am, I'm gonna have to be a different thing, person. The
Mm-hmm.
whole visage is going to be different than what I grew up with and what I envisioned. I'm guessing as you started to meet this new crowd, these new people, that it was sort of a lens or a mirror of you being like, oh wait, this is
Mm-hmm.
different, but this feels more right. Like how I can only imagine it was probably scary and also really exciting all at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's again back to Madonna reinventing herself. It just really resonated with me, and what I think what you said is being you know transformative, and being able to like adapt to your environment. And yeah, I distinctly remember, because I was a really good kid. I was the oldest and helped raise my three siblings, and I had like great, straight A's, and I was in art and all that. But then I distinctly remember seeing like Saved by the Bell, 90210, and there was all this drama with the teenagers. I'm like, why don't I have that drama? And I remember after fashion school,
I
I
love that you're like, why am I, Mario and I having a fight over some chick?
yeah,
That's right.
totally. Come on, Kelly
I want to go to
Kapowski.
the peach pit, right? Yeah.
It's funny. Our latest, well, she's 6 years old now, but our most recent pet that we adopted, her name is Tiffany Amber Thiessen. Yeah.
Do you
That's
call her
awesome.
Tat for short?
Just Tiff, just
Just
Tiff. But
Tiff.
I got to say it low because she's gonna wake up and run over here. Um.
My dog's actually passed out directly behind my chair right now. You can't see
Oh.
him. He's recovering from a little paw injury, but yeah, he's doing good. But
Oh,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
he usually would have just stayed in bed, but he was like, what is Dad doing in his office?
Totally. Up so loud and waking everybody up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I distinctly remember saying like, I'm gonna create that drama. I don't have that drama, and I don't have to be a good kid all the time. why do I have to raise my brothers? Why can't I just be me and just go live, my young life as I want to? And I sure did. I went through this, what I call my bad adolescence, and just went through like a raging, you know, transformative, like just everything. I remember shopping at the Mac counter. I remember meeting my first drag queens, going to the club arena, which for LA, that was basically Studio 54 for, the West Coast, in the 90s, and meeting like all the hottest DJs and the hottest like drag queen performers, and it just kind of blew my mind that this was this underground, up till sunrise kind of lifestyle. And then you would do it all over again the next day and have the DPs, and just, it was very avant-garde. It was like we would plan our day by going to the fashion district, get our outfits ready, plan the theme for that party, and then boom, do it all over again the night before. And that's really where I discovered entrepreneurship, and that, I could make $5 off every balloon that I sell with not helium but the other stuff, and then
Yeah.
charge
You
drag
can, you can
queens.
talk about what's in it. We're fine.
Oh yeah, we're
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's our nitroglycerin, like all that kind of like stuff. That it was silly, it was dumb, but it was a way of just kind of like, having control. Like the way I looked was the only thing I had control of. The people I hung out with and our culture and our lifestyle that we discovered together was what we had control of. And it was kind of invigorating, and it was just really freeing to be that weird and just be with other weirdos that were the same, and just appreciated like the craft for it, the music, the community. Really is what it was at the end. And yeah, it was awesome. I really fell in love with that.
So you talk about and I have the book in front of me. So you talk about the weirdos, and so
uh
I have to ask you, in the dedication piece, was that kind of a nod to both that group that you grew up with, as well as the group of, as the freaks and the geeks and the weirdos who are now going to come after you as well?
all of the above, yeah, for all those generations. I mean, I can imagine even now with our cultures and social media being so prevalent, and exposing how hard it can be for someone to be that young and try to find themselves, with a lot of stuff just being thrown at your face, where we didn't have that. Like we were making flyers with, paper and like Xeroxing them and putting a pager number, where yeah, so yeah, that dedication
Nothing
was
could be more
absolutely.
90s than saying the pager number. You just literally, you just put
Or a
us in
beeper.
1994, right? Yeah. Yeah, just hit my beeper.
Totally. Mine was awesome too. It was like neon green, and they used to call me Space Boy because I loved aliens. And yeah, anyhow, but yeah, that dedication is for all the freaks, geeks from my generation to now and going forward, period. Like I want them to feel safe, and I want to know that they are seen, and when they pick up this book, that they can have a way to escape when they do feel down, and know that this weirdo here speaking to you right now was able to still make something of themselves, and is still doing. I call myself a student of Mother Nature University, and I will always be that, because I if I don't stop learning, then I'm never going to stop being able to help others. So that's kind of like my mantra.
Well, and I don't mean this, and I'm going to say this, yeah, Erik knows I jokingly refer to myself a lot as the fat kid, not because I'm actually that fat, but I'm a little chubby, and I definitely was a fat kid. And there's power in words, and I feel like a lot of times it's better to take them than to let other people. But there's a piece of me that also is like, why do we have to do that? Like, it's not, and I don't
Mm.
mean this because I think it's important. So that's why I'm saying I don't think it's important to, I think it's important to talk about why it's important to grab that power, because it's like, Andrew, you're the furthest thing from a freak. You know what I mean? Like, and I say that it not just in a complimentary way. Like, I'm sitting here talking to this like incredibly well spoken, talented, beautiful man, no matter what else.
Oh, thank
And
you.
and that to me is what's important, right? Like, that's who I am talking to. That's who I see. That's,
Yeah.
but there is this piece of like, why do you feel like that? I know I do it all the time, so I know why I feel that way, and I'm happy to share it. But why is it that it's like, all right, fine, you want to use those words hurtfully, and I'm not going to let you. I'm going to take them, and I'm going to embrace that, and I think there's beauty and importance in that. But I just wonder why you think it's important to do it that way.
Yeah, no, you're right. Words hurt, and they really make a difference, and they set a tone. Um, though to this day, the word faggot just like cringes me, and it's funny because it doesn't bother my husband at all. But for me, it's like a knife on my back, just just kind of digging in there and just really getting into. I don't know. It's
Well, and it's strange. Like, I can tell you, Eric and I grew up at a time and in a culture where that word didn't mean gay, right?
right,
Like, we just like it was derogatory. I'm not saying it wasn't, but we didn't associate it. Like, I've never seen anyone called that F word meaning that they were gay. It was usually because they were doing something stupid, or
right.
so
Yep.
so it is hurtful, and it's hurtful in like a roundabout way. And I wonder if maybe your husband grew up in a culture where he's like, no one ever used that word that way, or and it is that strange thing, but it doesn't matter because that's the way it feels to you. So
Yeah, I mean, even the word gay sometimes it doesn't bother me at all. But you're right; like it was used as like, "Ah, you're so gay." Like that's just stupid. You know what I mean? It was,
Yep.
but yeah, words can be very powerful and hurtful, and um, yeah, I think there has to be a point where you take power back in those words and you use them in your benefit, and it goes back to taking the traumas and triumphing from that and making a benefit for you. But I don't know. I think it was therapy for me. I think it was finding community and finally getting past like all the traumatic relationships and the teens, the 20s, like all those things have shaped where I'm supposed to be and prepared me to, I guess, love myself really. I was always picking partners that were kind of projects that I could fix up and groom up and make them better and feel better. But really, I realized I was trying to fix me. And I was projecting my issues onto them, but I didn't know that as a teenager or as a 20-year-old, even a 30-year-old man. I didn't know that. It wasn't until later, and now I just look at my reflection, or even in a even in a dialogue with another human being where synergistically there's something not compatible. I often ask myself why. What is it about that person that is uh, triggering me or making me feel a type of way? And it usually has nothing to do with them. It's me. It's like whatever I'm going through at that moment. And then I realize I have to hold them accountable for the same reasons, on the same kind of, I guess, metaphor. So if I don't know where they're coming from, I don't know what their traumas are or what their triggers are, and if they are coming at me in a different way that is not making sense, I just listen now. Where so I think the amount of therapy that I've had with the amount of self discovery and work that I put into myself and for my students, because I use that philosophy in my classrooms as well, um, has just made me be a really good listener and reflect and look at myself more. And I know genuinely that the energy that I put out into a room can completely change the dynamics. I know I have that power, and I know everyone, you guys listening, you all have that power as well. Um, you just have to believe it, and once you see the reflection in the other person's light and your light in their eyes when you're making eye contact, it's a beautiful thing, and you see that kind of being infectious, and so I think that's what I'm trying to do with this book, with this cosmetic line, with this tour, is I want to be a positive infectious viral effect versus what we've been doing, not us particularly, but just humans in the past 4 years that we've been seeing all this negative stuff just also being infectious. But my point is that positivity can win and can always be the light at the end of this dark tunnel.
That's beautiful. And I'll share sort of my thought process a little bit, and I know Eric's ready to move into the next bit of what we want to talk about, but as an actor, and I grew up in a pretty old school, Eric and I grew up in a very old school blue collar working day kind of place. And I remember being like, yeah, I'm not going to play sports anymore. I'm a focus on theater and music, and how strange of and a move that was for me. But it was also at the same time I just had become exposed to the beat poets, and I love Kurt Vonnegut, who's an incredible writer, and has been, and it reminded me of two things. The first is a great Kurt Vonnegut quote, which is, "To be sane in a world, a sane person to an insane society must appear insane." Right, and he's a science fiction writer, so he very much would level the playing field in those ways. And then I remember the first time I heard "Howl" by Allen Ginsberg spoken out loud, and this vision and this idea of sort of mad humans searching for their tribe, so to speak, right? And there is this Western society bit of we're still very tribal, feudal. People try to find, your pack, so to speak. But it's also, I think, with the proliferation of mass media, we, especially early on, if you think about, the sort of mid 20th century, there was this homogenization. Everyone was seeing similar things or hearing and reading similar things, and it's like, oh, do I fit in or do I not fit in? And I wonder, as Gen Xers, and I guess you're right on the cusp. I don't know what they would, you sound more like a Gen Xer to me than a millennial, just the way you've described some of the stuff growing up. But it's almost like our parents and our kind of aunts and uncles who might have been a little bit younger, there was this we're gonna reject this, we're gonna go against it, the whole kind of cultural piece. And then we sort of ended up on the other side being like, yeah, that's cool and all, but where are your people? Because no matter how cool you are on your own, especially as a teenager or a 20 something, and like you said, even into your 30s, you're like, no man, I need my people. Where I'm not great at Spanish, but as you guys would say, mi gente, right? My
yeah, mi gente. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're habitual creatures, and that primal indigenous part of me it's very spiritual. It's very wanting to, like I said, share love and light. However, I do know that the darkness is always there. And even as a 40-year-old man, I call it my inner bitch voice or inner saboteur, whatever you guys want to call it. But you can still navigate your life knowing that that's there, and you can still shut it up and choose the positivity and the light. And by being of service to others and sharing that is how that becomes a virality. You know what I mean? And I see that around me oftentimes. And I've even seen the opposite form of where I had chosen the dark path and I almost lost the job, or I almost got a DUI, or my relationships in shambles, you know what I mean? And so and that is, it's all attracting each other. But yeah, it's funny. We just saw the latest Avatar, and it was so great. And I can't help but think of, the communal tribal pack mentality with that. I mean, it's literally, you're connecting a part of yourself into your avatar, which is basically my dog. And there's this synergy that connects you creatures together. It's really freaking beautiful. And I can't help but be so I don't know, thankful for that. When I look at the veins in my arms, I see the veins of the trees and the roots of the plant. Look at when I'm on a plane and I'm looking down into the earth and I see the rivers and the creeks and the cracks of earth. It's the same thing. We're all the same. So why do we have to judge each other for being different? We're all connected in somehow, in some capacity.
I mean, we're what 72% water. You know what
exactly.
I mean?
Exactly. It's really beautiful. And so, I recently lost my 14-year-old Chihuahua Terrier. We moved here September 1st. 13 days later, he passed away. And I felt myself going back to those anxious feelings of my adolescence. I felt those dark, really depressed, alone, because I hadn't lost a pet like that ever. It was my first time, and death is the closing of my book. It's the chapter 10, which is the death card of death, la muerte, and it's truly my biggest fear. I've faced it multiple times, and I realized that life is beautiful. And so, thinking about Tripper, that was my Chihuahua, Jack Tripper. Um, I think about his eyes, and I go on long walks when I do have those anxious moments, and I by myself without distraction, and I recite what I call the affirmation alphabet, and just off the top of my head, I come from letter A, affirmation B, beautiful, C, caring, D, go on, and it really calms me down and brings me back to this centered balance where you can be barefoot, plant your feet on Mother Nature, on Earth, and you're just more grounded. And those anxieties just kind of like leave; they just disappear. And Tripper reminds me that life is beautiful, and just by intaking that beautiful oxygen, just kind of feeds your brain, feeds your mind, your body, and your soul, and you're just back more centered to where you're supposed to be. And just trusting that intuition has really saved my life. My life, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's it's so beautiful, and I know it's always difficult losing a pet.
Hmm.
And we lost one of our cats this past April,
I'm
and
sorry.
as you said, it brings up the feelings of anxiety and sadness, and then but then you're able to realize that they were placed here and placed with us for
Hmm.
a reason, and
Absolutely.
often they're such healing animals, are such great healers, and
100%.
just like you have Tiffany, Amber Thiessen. I
Yeah.
love that. And we still have Taylor, named after Taylor Swift. Uh,
Cute.
yeah. And we've seen, sort of her brother sort of pass through into her, and now she's there for us.
Isn't
And
that amazing?
it's
And
it's
then
it's
the
crazy. Yeah.
the leader of the pack just changes. Yeah, same
Yeah.
thing. Chad
And,
Michael Murray is now the leader of our pack.
oh.
He's our
And
car
now,
interior.
I have the theme of Three's Company stuck in my head. So I'm gonna come and knock on your
Uh,
door. We've been waiting for you.
yes, that's right. I mean, that's really
Yeah.
where I also discovered, like, what is this gay story about this straight man living with two girls that has to act like he's gay for the landlord to not discover him? That also was very questionable at a young age. Like, what's going on here?
What is going on? Well, and it's a beautiful sort of like, I have to give those writers credit, right? Because they basically shoved an opposite closet story down a culture that was not ready for that in some ways. Because I remember, I've shared before, I have the like classic weird American story in this, like growing up super, super Catholic. And then my godfather is gay. And
Mhm.
so I had, my Uncle Lewis and my Auntie Roger.
I love
And
it.
yeah, and my grandmother to her dying day was like, they're roommates. And we're like, yeah, okay, grandma. You
Oh,
can tell
bless
yourself
her.
whatever you need to tell yourself. But
Wow.
but but she loved them. You know what I mean? So it was this
Yeah.
weird, like, and it's funny when you think about like turning it on, it's like, yeah, so um I always end up mixing it because it was Jack Tripper, right? Because John
Yeah.
Ritter is the actor. Jack
Yeah.
Tripper was the name of the
Jack
character.
Chipper
Correct.
was the main character.
Yeah, because I always end up
Correct.
I put their names together because they're
Well,
so
it's
close.
Jay, and it's yeah.
Yeah,
I can see that. Yeah.
and the
And
Ritter
then
Tripper. But this idea of like, okay, so an unmarried male and female couple can't live together, but it's totally cool for this gay guy to live with these two women, which, by the way, like, who knows, right? Like the
right, right.
landlord is like, and the
Mr. Hooper.
hilarity,
Yeah.
and then Mr. Hooper, by the way, brilliant casting too. Like that show was hysterical.
Wait, wasn't Mr. Roper?
Mr. Roper.
Mr. Roper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Roper. That's
Yeah.
right.
And then the Furleys? No. There was the couple.
Oh yeah, that was the couple next door.
Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
was the Furleys. And you think about this like idea, and it's like, it's sort of a weird analogous for like what you're talking about of this idea of like, all right, so I have to walk a certain way or I'll get clocked. I have to
Yeah.
talk, and the fact of the matter is, I don't know when or how we're going to get here, but maybe some of the proliferation of like not mass media that's controlled, right? Like thinking about social media,
Yeah.
TikTok, just exposure to it. It's like, I mean, because I am very much if it doesn't affect me, I do not care. Like I
Right.
just go ahead, man.
I mean, we've
Whatever
definitely come a long way. And
we have, but we're not there
there,
yet, though.
no, we're not. There's still a lot of work to be done. But I will say, in my lifetime, I mean, comparing the '80s to the early '80s to where we're at in 2020 it's a significant difference.
It
You know
is.
what I mean?
It is.
And I am so proud of the youth and the LGBTQ community and just how vocal they are and how passionate they are about speaking up and having a voice. Like, I wish I had that confidence at that age, because I feel like I would have made even more of a difference. But no, and I find myself in classrooms now, like learning even from them, and I'm the biggest advocate for them now, in just like with attendance now, saying like there shouldn't be a nickname section. Like there should be a preferred pronoun section now, and we shouldn't have like with our curriculum, it shouldn't just end at the '90s. Like these kids are getting younger, and it should continue. Like when we're studying like period and decades, we start in the Egyptian era and go all the way, but it finishes always at the '90s. So now we're extending it to the 2000s, the Y2Ks, the 2010s, because they're going to continue to be younger and even more aware. Like they're doing their own research, which I think is pretty cool.
It is cool, but I'm going to tell them right now, they need to stop referring to the 80s and 90s as the late 1900s. That's fucked up to us old people. And stop it. It's not fair. It's weird.
I agree. We're from that area, and it's
that is
no.
literally our childhood that you're like wagging in front of our faces. Like, here you go, old fuckers. That's not okay.
Totally. No, but I will say that I still, as their teacher, and their mentor, I still have to bring up the fact of all the pioneers and the musicians and the artists that have paved the way from each decade to where we're at now. Because if it wasn't for like Madonna, then we would not have Taylor Swift or Britney Spears or Christina, like all, you know what I mean? So
1,000%.
And they have
well,
to
I mean,
be
Lady
reminded.
Gaga, who you've worked with, has
Mhm.
referenced how Madonna, not only her music and and the incorporation of dance and everything, but the way she shaped her persona, how much that affected how Lady Gaga thought about her career. So
Absolutely.
But you
Yes.
both, and Andrew, I think you've given a terrific segue into what you and I talked about a couple of weeks ago, which is there's some amazing things which are going on with the current
Mhm.
generation in the LGBTQ community, and speaking
Mhm.
openly and sharing and being vulnerable. But you've recently moved to Orlando, which is,
Mhm.
as you said, not very far from the Pulse nightclub. Marc
Right.
and I are, about 130 miles from Club Q, where
Right.
that tragic shooting just took place, and I want to spend a little time talking about what's happening now within the LGBTQ plus community, because when we
Mhm.
talk about mental health, and I had this interesting conversation with my therapist last night, in preparation for today's conversation, and
Yeah.
we talked about when you grow up and when you're dealing with mental health issues, anxiety, depression, OCD, there's often a perceived lack of safety and security, and that's
Mhm.
created within us. But that's something that we then can learn to understand where it's coming from and why it's there, and we can start to build a more solid foundation. Unfortunately, when it comes to the LGBTQ plus community, many times once you then step out, and as you talked about, you were deep in the closet, but once you then step out into that community, it no
Mhm.
longer, unfortunately, in today's society, goes from a perceived feeling of unsafe and insecure to an actual, right, lack of safety and security, shootings, bullying,
Mhm.
right, and all of these things that we've seen. So the question I want to ask is, number one, why? And Marc had said, I don't care. I don't care what other people do, but why?
Right.
Why is that the case? Why? Um, and then we can get into a larger discussion as to how we begin to address it and how we begin to build up that community and
Yeah.
start to make that community feel more safe and secure.
Well, it's funny because I'm born and raised Los Angeles and never thought I would live anywhere else. And I'm 40 years old now. I'm going to be 41 next Tuesday, December 27th. And you know, I was skeptical. I had hesitations, and I had just kind of like reservations on living in Orlando, Florida, just because even earlier this year, with schools being banned from saying the word gay and not allowed to use that terminology in classroom because parents thought their kids were going to, be influenced and not and choose a different route. Um, but I will say, when we came for our 8th year anniversary last May, I came in with an open mind, and I said to myself, Andrew, if you are expecting others to be accepting of you and for all of you, then you should hold yourself accountable and do that for others, even if you don't understand their conservativeness or um, their traditions or their way of thinking. So I did. I came, and it was almost like Mother Nature or universe was showing me, you still have something in common even with this conservative Caucasian person in Florida. And it really proved me wrong. It really, I think, because I set that intention, right, and coming over here with an open mind, um, it showed me that there was still beauty, and there was still hope, even in people that we're raised traditionally very conservative. So I think because I didn't lose that hope, I was shown the beauty around. And we've been living here since September. It's December now. And we have this like small group of friends that have just blossomed. Um and so my point is like, yeah, there is a lot of work that has to be done. And I think by being vocal about that and not continuing to just like shove it under and say we're gonna get fixed, and there's no more work that needs to be done. um my point is that we have to continue to talk and have that dialogue. So even I appreciate you, Erik. I appreciate you, Marc, for being men that are straight cis hetero men that are accepting of the vulnerabilities and discussing emotions, and having these types of conversations is very healthy, and I appreciate it. I'm advocating for you from my community to just continue to be those beautiful men, because I think if more straight men do that, then it's just going to be more normalized. It's just going to be like Marc said, who cares? Who cares who's doing what?
Yep.
Who cares who's loving who and what they look like? At the end of the day,
As
if
long
you're
as
being
it's love, right? And I think that's the part that people lose track of, right? Like, and
mm-hmm,
I guess it's a point, to kind of further ask that question, Andrew. It's like, I feel like it's one of those things, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because you live it. It's one of those things where in smaller groups or situations, we one can't help but embrace your humanness. I
right,
can't, and for lack of a better way of putting it, I can't other you if I've spent 5 minutes chatting with you, Andrew. I can't, right? There's too much
right.
you and I have in common as humans living in the world. And I wonder sometimes, like, as we've become more connected in those smaller communities, like you just said beautifully, like I got to this place and I was expecting this, and then I found I didn't
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know, right? And I wonder if there's a bit of it, and it comes down to exposure and education and all those things. But I do wonder sometimes if like that's how this isolation, I think specifically of the Club Q shooting, just because it's close and we've followed it, like,
Yeah.
this and this is what sucks. Like, not only the victims of this crime, this the perpetrator of this crime was a victim in himself. Like he
Mhm.
had, a judge in 2021, he had a kidnapping, he kidnapped his own family, like,
Right.
and they were like, wow, this guy needs help, he doesn't get the help, and then we end up with this, right? So you can see this through line, and this level of isolationism, and that and I wonder sometimes if that's what it is. It's like, if you just met somebody who just doesn't look exactly like you, doesn't sound exactly like you, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden you're like, wait, I love this person, they're great.
Right.
It, like, you can't, and I don't know if, if I'm making this up in my own head, but it's like this othering of like, yeah, you're not like me, and then it's easier to kind of foment hate and foment this sense of, that it, someone else's life doesn't matter. And to me, sitting here, I'm like, I can't make sense of that, but obviously it
Mhm.
happens. So it's almost like we're forced to like deconstruct it to help get rid of it.
100%. And like I said earlier, just having these types of conversations with more men, because I think it's gonna come down to the men, because a lot of the times they're the ones in power when it comes to like government and all that kind of stuff. But um, and also speaking up for others that don't have a voice, and that you see are getting attacked or are being bullied, or there is racism. Like even with a racist person, like having a healthy conversation with them about why, like where, and then in reflection you realize like, oh, that's their learned behavior. They know nothing else. That's just how they were raised, and they genuinely think that's the right way. But when you have the dialogue and you show them examples of other beauty in other forms and shapes and colors and sizes, then they can see that maybe their original or behavior wasn't the right way, or um and yeah, just like I said, just continue to have these types of conversations. So let's keep that momentum going. I think this can be a trend. I think let's start the men talking about emotions being a trend, and just keep that. It can be a hashtag. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
that's what I'm talking about.
Well,
Yeah.
I've seen what it's like, hashtag vulnerability is the new strong, or like there's been a few. We could make that train happen. We could,
Let's do it. I'm down.
Yeah, no,
Let's go.
and I would also say I think every man should be given a plane ticket to either New York, LA, or London, and you get to spend 48 hours in one of those major cities
All my favorite places.
because we don't see that type of uh, gun violence or a
Hmm.
mass shooting take place in those cities, because you're living in these melting pots where people are much more
Exactly.
accepting, right? So I think that could also potentially go a long way. And I have to say, uh, while you were speaking earlier, and talking about the dedication of the book, it started to get me thinking as well, because I was in college, late '80s, early '90s, and it brought me right back to my dorm room and all of the concert posters that I had hanging all over the walls, and it was Morrissey, the Smiths, Depeche Mode, and Erasure,
Yeah.
and at the time, I thought the music itself and the sound was incredible, but now as I sit here and hear you speak, and and I start to think about the lyrics to some of those songs, I myself very well am one of those people who you referred to in
absolutely.
your dedication.
And by the way, a bunch of
Awesome.
dudes with painted fingernails and eye makeup,
Yeah,
some of them rocking, right? Like, you think about the Smiths, like
Hmm.
they were a rock band.
Oh, for
And
sure.
like, and then you move through the Cure, which sort of like started to jam electric music into rock, and then I can't help but go like, all right, and then boom, you birth Perry Farrell, Nine Inch Nail, like this whole thing,
Yes.
and so for me as a musician, and as somebody who really appreciates that stuff, it was the vanguard of that, and I've never really thought about the countercultural ideal of it, because we're part of the MTV generation, and that
Right.
was the fucking shit that was cool. You know what I mean? Like, I think about it, like,
I
I
mean,
never
the hair
painted my
metal
nails.
bands, all of that.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I never painted my nails. I never did that stuff. Like, I wasn't into it, but I never looked at somebody who was like, oh, painted nails, you're weird.
Right.
Half the time I would be like, wow, they must be in a band. They're cooler than me, or whatever. Like, and I think there's a piece of that, right? Like, there's, you know, and I go back to my earlier question about like taking back, like, oh, why do we have to be the freaks, the geeks, and the weirdos to have the power? And it's like, well, we're also the ones that set the trends and change the world, right? Like,
Oh, legit.
you know, so, and it's funny, I was thinking about it because there was that great TV show in 1999 called Freaks and Geeks. And then I, you know, I'd harken back to this idea of Al Howell and Allen Ginsberg and the Beat Poets. And, you know, I till this day, thanks to acting school, still remember, you know, I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical. Yeah, and it's like, wait, that's the opening line of a poem about
Right.
a generation. Like, I mean, that's literally what Allen Ginsberg was
Incredible.
doing. He wrote that for, oh, I forget the guy's name he wrote that for. That's not fair. But
Fun
whatever.
fact, I've done Robert Smith's makeup multiple times, and his wife, and was able to see him front row at the Troubadour in West Hollywood.
Oh, I love the
And
truth.
he wears a black metal nail polish, Russian red Ruby Roo lipstick, black smolder liner, and C2 studio fixes, which is way too light for his complexion. That's what he wanted.
But that's but that's what he's been wearing since the mid 80s.
Oh, for sure. And still rocks it to this day.
It still rocks it to this day. And you can see, like, you know, we could do this and we could help the younger generation do this. Like, you put your mind's eye back to like London 1984 when they were starting to like play clubs and stuff. And they were just looking for a way to differentiate themselves from all the other bands, right? It's all like, it's really no different than Kiss deciding they were going to wear tall ass boots and fucking
self-expression, creativity. It's all part of the same kind of rock band mentality. Yeah.
And it's what you said earlier, be you.
Yeah.
It's all about being you.
Absolutely. And the fact that Morrissey resonated so much with my Latino community, specifically in Southern California, it just kind of blows my mind. He's really like the mariachi, you know, sad, lyrical kind of poet of grunge, and not grunge, well, new wave at the time.
New wave.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, my husband can't stand it, but I still listen to Morrissey the Smiths to this day. He's kind of indifferent with the 80s. He likes more like 70s disco. He's more of kind of like a beats kind of guy, like house. We share house music in common. And now I've discovered, I don't know if you guys know the current DJs, but like, and for me, Fred again is the Morrissey of house music that Morrissey was for new wave, because he's that same kind of like sad house lyrical kind of poet, but it's still beautiful. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It makes sense. One, and look, we have the same thing in my household. My wife is a full-on child of the 80s music, like the Smiths, The Cure. She Tears for Fears, which
I love it.
And this is the joke, is because I say that I hate 80s music because that stuff is not my jam, but I'm a full-on, like, I love The Police, Sting, Genesis, Guns N' Roses, and there's all this like seminal rock music that we think of as either 70s or 90s, but it really has its roots in the 80s. And you know, and
well, so even just in the past couple of days, driving from my house over to, you know, the mountain, I've been listening to a lot of Janet, and that
concert as a Janet Jackson.
Janet Jackson, and Amy and I were watching the induction into the 2022 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it was Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam, and then right away, like, it put me into Janet Jackson mode, and that song Control, the more I listen to it, is like, I mean, she wrote that for all of us, but for herself, you know, first and foremost, but for all of us who we turned 18 at some point, and we knew the way we were living and how we were living was not where we belonged.
Absolutely.
That song just has such power and such amazing lyrics.
Agree. I mean, yeah, that was the first concert I saw. It was Rhythm Nation.
Oh, nice.
I think I was like 7, 8 years old, but it was just my cool uncle who's an architect. He's my godfather, and he just exposes to, music and culture and art, and he would draw with us like that. That's another person that I feel that so mentorship, yeah, mentorship is very important. I think when you had asked um who was that safe space for you, like when you were a kid, and it was just someone that I looked up to that was also creative. And for me, it's just always going to go back to like the arts in any kind of genre. It doesn't have music. It can be, visually. It doesn't have to just be like drawing. Literally, it can be any form of art, whatever. It's expression too, right?
Yep.
Well,
That's
it's
what it
just
is.
thinking about art, though, Eric. You just brought this up, and it's amazing. So, this year, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, in the same induction class, you got Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis and Dolly Parton.
I love Dolly.
I do too, and I also love Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. So it's like, and I wonder, like, as you see this, like, if you think about the idea of, like, if you just said Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the vision you have in your head is probably a little narrower. I'm going to admit this for myself. It's a little narrower than Dolly Parton and Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. And so I think, even something like that, which is like this weird institutional, pop art thing. It's like, wait, no. Like, they rock too. Cool. They belong in the
Absolutely.
club. Like, if Dolly Parton doesn't belong in that club, no one belongs in that club. Let's just be clear about that.
And she has a freaking amusement park, Dollywood.
That's right.
I can't wait to go to that.
And by the way, has given away pretty much all of her money to children's libraries. So, like, we all could be a little more Dolly. But sorry,
Love
Eric,
her.
I jumped on you.
No, that's fine. And Duran was inducted into that class as well. So.
Were they in that
nice.
class too? And look at, like, you think about that, like that.
That's all the genres.
Like, all genres, covers a huge range. But the fact of the matter is, when you turn on the radio, if one of those three artists comes on, you're gonna listen. I mean, Jolene, Dolly Parton's version of Jolene is one of my favorite songs of all time. It just hands down.
See, it's really like the arts just save the world. If you think about it, it's the arts are what kind of put all the melting pots of all cultures and genres in this beautiful, like, Pandora. You know what I mean? Like, it's just art. Without arts, I don't know where we would be.
It's going to sound cheesy, but for me, I've always thought, especially, being an actor and a singer, like, art is the reflection of a human experience, and you can't deny it. And I think that's what I was talking about earlier when I had this idea of, like, if you meet someone, you can't and spend a little time with them, it's really hard to other them if you get to know them a little bit. And I think that's what the arts do, right? It's a window into what this other person's human experience is, and then it's really hard to other someone. Like, look, some of these artists are, as you want to talk strange, weird freaks, geeks, like, all the way out there, but that bit of human experience they share with you is so beautiful and so tender and kind of lights us up, right? That's what art does. Like, they look at our brain when someone's exposed to a beautiful piece of art, no matter what it is, the brain lights up. Like, we get it, we appreciate it, and I think you're spot on, Andrew. You really are. Well,
and before we wrap up this amazing conversation, I do, Andrew, want you to have a chance to kind of plug the book, because it's been out now for just over a month, and I'm looking forward to reading the whole thing. I got it yesterday, 2 nights ago, and I kind of started to flip through, but I know there's such an interesting story, not only in the book itself, but in how you wrote the book and how it came out of a really cool game that you and your brothers and the kids played. So if you want to kind of chat about that just for a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that segue. My mom introduced us to a Mexican bingo game called Loteria, and that's what Loteria means. They resemble tarot style cards, and so you would have your deck, and then they would say La Rosa, which is the rose, and you would put your little pinto bean on the rose, and you would say Loteria when you filled up the whole thing. I was really mesmerized by the artwork behind those cards, and later in life discovered, tarot and the spirituality and the meanings that are behind each card in tarot as well. And I realized that in Loteria, it's the same thing. They have meanings behind, each card. And so I chose 10 that resonated with my life, and I took, my craft, and I poured it onto models by painting them into these characters, photographing that to be the artwork of the book. The book is called Love is Art, Art is Love. And I really see it in just this mirror reflection love is art is love. And for me, the other cannot exist without the other, or one cannot exist without the other. And those two things have really saved my life, passion for love and passion for art. And so my job here is to just expose that story and share with others. And in Spanish, it's amor es arte, arte es amor. And while doing the body makeups, I realized there was a lack of like pigments, and so I really wanted it to saturate. So I went into product development earlier this year and decided to also come out with my own cosmetic line. And I have a makeup palette called Mi Corazon, which is right here. So these are all the eyeshadows. Again, all the original artwork from used into the palette. But yeah, I'm really proud of this. This has been, a 4-year passion project of mine, but ultimately it took 40 years to make, because if I hadn't experienced those 40 years on this planet, then I wouldn't be able to share the knowledge and the growth with others and the potentials that they can also find in themselves. And so that's the bug. It was launched November 15th. I started tour here in Orlando last week, holding master classes and readings, and then I'll be in Nashville, Tennessee, next to Dolly in February. And then I'll be heading to the West Coast in LA in March at the Wiltern, where I'll have my 2-day masterclass. Well, I'll be redoing the Mi Corazon body makeup, and then also do a book reading and a book signing at the Wiltern in Los Angeles for March. And so we'll see how this tour continues. But yeah, I'm really excited, and I want people to just, when, like I said earlier, if they feel down, with a little bit of love and color in their life, they're just gonna just feel much better. And that's my job. If I can leave that little legacy behind, I'm good. If it can touch a little gay boy or girl on the other side of the world, my job is done. Like, that's my mission.
It's not little. It might touch the heart of a little gay boy or a little girl, but it isn't. I mean, Andrew, your story, I think everyone's story has an importance, but coming from where you came from and ending up where you are, and the beauty and the passion that you share for, and the thing is, it'd be easy, talking about othering someone, it'd be easy to be like, oh, it's that lifestyle, it's this thing. It's not. It's way larger than that, and I credit you for that, because it's not.
Thank you.
It's limitless. It's not limited, right? It's not just for. It's for
right.
all, and it doesn't matter. It just doesn't.
Yeah, and that's the mission statement behind the brand. It's color and beauty for everyone, because everyone is deserving of it. And so that's my job. Yeah, and you can find everything on amor.com or loveisart.artislove.com. It's in English and Spanish. And the book is going to be available in Spanish soon, but I'm just working on the translation manuscripts at the moment. And then hopefully an audio version as well. So I have the gear that you guys have, the cool microphone and all that. I just need to, focus and set the time to do it and make sure that it comes out in good quality. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I'm excited.
I think an audiobook would be great. You have a great voice, and people would love. I mean, what better thing than to hang out with Andrew a little bit on your commute?
Why not?
That's right.
Give you a little color in life.
Well, I'm as I did recently on a regular episode, Erik, I'm gonna let you wrap up a special episode. How about that?
Oh, wow. I get to wrap up a special episode. So, Andrew, I just want to say, thank you so much. It's been amazing having you as a guest, getting to meet you as a friend, getting to see all the amazing things that you're doing in your own life, and especially to help others. And you and I both shared how we want that to be our lasting legacy, which I think is incredible. And
absolutely,
at some point when ski season ends, I'm either going to have to come out to LA if you're on the West Coast, or down to Florida, because I'm going to need my post ski season glow up. Yes,
hey.
I gotta get the brows done, get the hair.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
And we can go hang out with Mickey after.
Yeah, yes,
whether it's Disney World or Disneyland.
But Marc, any last words?
I just want to say, Andrew, not only thank you for sharing your incredible and inspiring story, but how just effortlessly, you have basically woven this into the fabric of what the world needs. And because it is like, I don't, it sounds sort of glib how I say it, and I don't mean it that way, but like it really can't matter. Like, human is human, full stop. And it drives me nuts that we're still so fractionalized, and the political landscape does not help. But like I said, if we could just get to know each other a little bit better, or just have that just ounce of empathy or understanding and compassion to start, I
Yeah.
think we'll all get a lot further. And I thank you for that reminder and sharing it with so much passion and love. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Eric, for having me. This podcast is great. You guys are doing God's work, so continue the good work. And I appreciate, like I said, you being an ally and being a voice, and just continue to share that love and light with others. And I know that you're going to have a lot of good things coming your way as well. And I'm just reflecting what I see back to you, is what I'm saying.
Thank you so much. Well, on behalf of my amazing co-host, Marc Fernandez, and our terrific guest, Andrew Velasquez, this is Erik DeRosa from Survivor to Thriver, special episode. And in the words of my co-host, I will leave you with, let's please all be as well as we can.